It's definitely not Chinese food.
Croissants come from France, and sauerkraut is from Germany, right? Wrong! Here are 10 national foods Americans always get wrong. Tomato sauce actually originated in France.
A meatball rolled in breadcrumbs with a caramelized tomato sauce drizzle.
There's nothing more quintessentially Italian than spaghetti with tomato sauce. Or so you thought. You might be surprised to learn that tomato sauce didn't originate in Italy at all. It's actually from France. Forget escargot and beef bourguignon, the most famous French dish in history might actually be pasta with red sauce. Red spaghetti sauce first appeared in French cuisine way back in 1797, 164 years before Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking was published. The first time tomato sauce was mentioned in an Italian cookbook wasn't until the early 19th century. It seems the French have the Italians beat by at least a few years.
I finally beat you! Beat you!
Tomato sauce, or as it's known in France, sauce tomate, is one of the 5 major sauces in classical French cooking. If you want to be as skilled in the kitchen as Jacques Pepin, you better know how to use sauce tomate. It's often served with eggs, veggies, roasted meats, and, of course, pasta. Tomato sauce may not have originated in Italy, but plenty of other pasta sauces did. Creamy white sauce and wine sauce date all the way back to ancient Rome. However, the Romans didn't eat these sauces with pasta. The ancient Romans didn't eat tomatoes either, since tomatoes weren't grown in ancient Rome. They were introduced to Italy in the 16th century by way of South America. Tempura is actually from Portugal.
Japanese!
Japan is known for its wonderful food. From sushi to sashimi to yakitori, the Japanese restaurant scene is a foodie's paradise. However, there are numerous famous Japanese foods that aren't actually Japanese at all. You probably know that ramen is actually Chinese and that curry was introduced to Japan by the Royal British Navy. But did you know that tempura is actually Portuguese? Jesuits from Portugal introduced tempura to the Japanese people in the mid-16th century. According to historians, the Portuguese Jesuits began exchanging recipes with Japanese locals. One recipe that caught the eye of the native Japanese was peixinhos da horta, also known as little fish of the garden. The Portuguese version of tempura consisted of battered and fried green beans, which was a staple food in Portugal. The Japanese quickly put their own spin on the recipe by using local ingredients.
We will improvise then.
Today, there are as many varieties of tempura as there are anime. If you visit Tokyo, you can sample all different kinds of tempura, including shrimp, yam, shiso leaf, mushroom, and even tomato. If you're really adventurous, like Homer Simpson, you can even try fugu tempura. Just make sure the chef removes all the poison from the fish first. Sauerkraut first appeared in Asia.
Sauerkraut, das ist gut.
Sauerkraut goes perfectly with bratwurst, wieners, and frankfurters. Forget the ketchup. If you top your hot dog with sauerkraut, you'll be in heaven. It's also the perfect topping for a cheesy and crispy Reuben sandwich. It might just be the perfect German condiment. But wait a minute, sauerkraut isn't even German. Most people associate sauerkraut with Germany, but that's actually a myth. Germany may have created Adidas sneakers and the Volkswagen Beetle, but sauerkraut was imported into Germany. So where did sauerkraut originally come from anyway? Many historians believe that the delicious pickled sour cabbage actually originated in Asia. According to legend, Genghis Khan and his Mongol hordes introduced sauerkraut into Germanic territories in the 13th century. If you want to be as strong and powerful as Genghis Khan, then you better eat your vegetables. Sauerkraut, to be exact. New to our channel? Then take a quick second and hit that subscribe button and never miss a new video. Thanks! Croissants come from Austria.
My croissant? But where's the smoked turkey?
Can you imagine a more perfect breakfast than a croissant and a cup of coffee from a Parisian cafe? Croissants are absolutely magical. It doesn't matter if you get them from a tiny French bakery or from Costco. They're always buttery, flaky, and delicious. Most people think that these famous pastries originated in France, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In actuality, croissants are a French take on a classic Austrian puff pastry called Kipfel. France may have made croissants famous, but without Austria, we wouldn't be able to enjoy a sausage, egg, and cheese croissant sandwich from Burger King. So what exactly is Kipfel? Well, it's very much like a croissant. It's moist and mouth-watering, and it looks quite similar to a croissant as well, thanks to its distinct crescent shape. There are differences, however. While you can get croissants filled with sweet confections like chocolate and marzipan, savory options are much more popular. Kipfel, on the other hand, is sweeter than a Wonka bar thanks to mountains and mountains of powdered sugar. So how did the Kipfel morph into the croissant? Well, in 1838, an Austrian baker named August Zang set up shop in Paris. He only stayed in the City of Light for a short period of time, and when he left, enterprising French bakers altered his Kipfel recipe to create the croissant we know today. How ingenious! Caesar salad is Mexican.
Caesar salad with tater tots instead of croutons.
Oh, that's me. Salad. Trying to eat healthy.
What comes to mind when you think of Mexican food? Tacos, burritos, chimichangas? Maybe you get a craving for a super-sized Baja Blast from Taco Bell. Those are all good choices, but there's one famous Mexican food you shouldn't overlook. We're talking about the Caesar salad. What's that, you say? You didn't know that the Caesar salad originated in Mexico? Well, it did, and it's a truly fascinating story. The Caesar salad isn't from Rome, and it's not from the USA. It was created by an Italian immigrant in Tijuana. Over the 4th of July weekend in 1924, restaurateur Cesar Cardini created the Caesar salad when he found himself in a pinch.
Salad? How do you make a salad?
He simply tossed what he had available into a bowl, gave it a good mix, and voila! The Caesar salad was born. The original recipe consisted of romaine lettuce, Dijon mustard, black pepper, lime juice, croutons, Parmesan cheese, an egg yolk, fresh ground garlic, olive oil, and Worcestershire sauce. A couple years later, Caesar's brother Alex added anchovies to the mix for an extra bit of kick. The Caesar salad was an instant hit, especially with Americans who were crossing the border to escape prohibition. These tourists thought the Caesar salad paired perfectly with a good libation. Caesar's restaurant in Tijuana is still open to this day, and the Caesar salad recipe remains unchanged. Frog legs are an English delicacy.
Hey, spit that out.
There's some weird food in France. Foie gras, sea whelks, and stinky cheese are bizarre delicacies in France, but the strangest food of them all is undoubtedly frog legs. Frog's legs are found on menus all over Paris, but some people get a bit squeamish when they think of this delicacy. The average American might associate frog's legs with France, but the truth is far stranger. According to archaeologists from England, there's evidence that Brits were eating frogs and toads as far back as 6250 BCE. If you own a French restaurant, you may want to take frog's legs off the menu because it turns out this delicacy is actually British. It's really not that surprising considering they eat jellied eels in Great Britain. Which would you rather eat, eel or frogs?
Why not both?
Neither sound particularly appetizing, but you'll never know unless you try them. Here's some more evidence that frog's legs are actually a British food. At a dig site near Stonehenge, archaeologists found evidence of ancient peoples eating a menu reminiscent of something Andrew Zimmern might eat. Archaeologists found evidence that these natives ate wild boar, red deer, wild cattle, and toad's legs. Come to think of it, toad's legs are probably a bit more filling than frog's legs, so bon appetit! Cheesecake is not from New York.
I love cheesecake.
You're lactose intolerant.
New York cheesecake is divine, but maybe it needs a new name. You see, cheesecake didn't originate in New York at all. Arnold Rubin, yes, the same guy who created the Reuben sandwich, created New York-style cheesecake at his Manhattan Deli back in 1929, but cheesecake itself dates back much further. Reuben's New York-style cheesecake was unique because it used cream cheese instead of the traditional cottage cheese. Reuben knew he had a hit on his hands right off the bat. Without Reuben, there would be no Cheesecake Factory, so let's all be thankful that he was such an innovator. There have been many different kinds of cheesecakes in history. Reuben created a new twist on an old classic, but Europeans have been making cheesecakes for thousands of years. The ancient Greeks were very fond of honey cakes and poppy seed cakes, but their favorite cakes were somewhat similar to the modern cheesecake. They would mix honey with cheese curds and place the mixture into a mold.
Now I want it.
You probably wish you had Doc Brown's DeLorean so you could travel back in time and try some ancient Greek cheesecake yourself. Ancient Romans also ate cheesecake too. The Romans called them placenta cakes, and they were baked into loaves with a crust. Roman placenta cake consisted of many layers and was filled with cheese and honey. More honey was added to the top to make the cake even sweeter. Fortune cookies are Japanese, not Chinese.
3 orders of wonton soup.
And then?
Some fortune cookies, too.
You've probably never received a fortune cookie after you've eaten sushi, but maybe you should. It turns out that fortune cookies are actually Japanese, not Chinese. The fortune cookie is most closely associated with Americanized Chinese food. You've probably eaten plenty of fortune cookies after devouring some fried rice, egg rolls, or a plate of sweet and sour pork. However, treats filled with fortunes can be traced back to the Edo period in Japan. It turns out that samurai used to eat rice crackers filled with numerological guidance. The Japanese called these ancient fortune cookies omikuji senbei, and historians have found evidence of their existence in numerous texts. The Japanese may have created fortune cookies, but the Chinese perfected them. Here's a famous fortune cookie quote that sums it up perfectly: "Success lies in the hands of those who want it." Chinese immigrants to the U.S. wanted to make the fortune cookie successful, and they succeeded. Wonton soup without a fortune cookie just wouldn't be the same. Americans invented spaghetti with meatballs.
Spaghetti angel! I'm making a spaghetti angel!
You can thank the good old US of A for spaghetti and meatballs. This famous Italian dish isn't really Italian at all. You're unlikely to find anyone in Italy eating meatballs with their pasta. Instead, meatballs are eaten all by their lonesome, sans pasta. It was Italian-American immigrants who decided to start mixing meatballs with pasta. Italian immigrants could rarely afford meat in the old country, but when they came to the States, they had access to a wealth of beef, pork, and veal. All that meat was an offer they couldn't refuse. Italian immigrants began grinding up cheap cuts of meat and mixing it with breadcrumbs to create meatballs. These meatballs were then paired with red sauce and pasta to create what we now know as spaghetti and meatballs.
Since when don't you like spaghetti and meatballs, huh?
Today, the dish is incredibly popular. You can find it everywhere, from Italian restaurants on Staten Island to the canned food aisle of your local grocery store. If you're traveling to Italy, however, you're unlikely to find spaghetti and meatballs at any restaurant you visit. If you're hoping to find some good old-fashioned Italian-American comfort food during your next trip to Verona or Milan, simply ask for beef ragu. That's the closest dish you'll find to spaghetti and meatballs in Italy. Not as American as apple pie.
Something more important to do.
Apple pie?
You've probably heard the saying, "as American as apple pie," about 1,000,000 times. Well, it turns out that saying doesn't make much sense at all. You see, apple pie isn't actually American. In fact, it originated in Europe. There weren't even apple trees in America until European settlers brought the apple seeds with them. Apples are actually native to Kazakhstan, not the USA. As Borat would say,
It's nice.
when European settlers first arrived in America, all they found were paltry crabapple trees. Frankly, you can't do much with crab apples. You can use them to make jam or cider, but they're definitely not suitable for pies. The first settlers quickly realized this, so they made sure to send word back to the old country. Once apple seeds arrived, the planting began. After a few bountiful harvests, apple pies became commonplace in America. Apple pie became synonymous with the USA thanks mostly to folklore. Remember Johnny Appleseed? He didn't really spread apple seeds all over the USA, but European settlers sure did. They brought all sorts of different kinds of apples to the New World. Advertisements also played a huge part in making apple pie an American staple. Advertisements in the 1950s and 60s from companies like Pillsbury and Crisco made apple pie even more popular in the United States. We've got more. Just tap or click on another video. First time here? Then hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell.